welcome to Tips for Cooking Without Oil. I welcome everybody out in Zoom as well as everybody here in the studio audience with me. So glad that you're here to join me. I'm Robin Withrow-Wong. I'm a registered dietitian, and I love talking about food, and especially food and how it can improve our health. So today we're going to talk about oil, and it's really interesting. People often tell me, I don't know how to cook without oil. And so I was like, this is a really good topic for us to talk about because there's so many tricks we can do. And the reason, and I'm going to talk to you what those are, but I'm also going to talk to you about really why we want to do that. Because when you understand the why, it makes actually the application way easier, okay? So we're going to start with our slides. Sorry, my helper's trying to slip away there. There we go. So let's go to the next one. Awesome. So what are we going to cover today? So we're going to talk about, fats as an overview. We're going to talk about kind of what they are. And we're going to talk about why we want to reduce the use of oil. Then we're going to kind of jump into the different types of oils, because I always get the question, what about olive oil or what about avocado? There's always a kind of an oil of popularity that's going on that people really feel they should be using, and we're going to learn about, do we really need to be using that? I always want you to question that, okay? Then we're going to talk about the good oils, okay? And that's, again, that's sort of the olive oil falls into that category. And then we're going to talk about where is oil sneaking in to our meals. And it is pretty stealthy, and it does sneak into our meals. And I want you just to be aware of that so that you can always make that choice, whether or not you really want to take it in or not, okay? And then we're going to talk about swaps. Swaps you can make where you can actually, right off the top of your meal, lighten it up. And we're going to actually make a salad dressing, because that's one of the areas that oil sneaks in. And we're going to make a salad dressing today with 0 oil, but it's still delicious. And it kind of brings a lot of other great stuff with it. So I want you to start thinking of your food as being, okay, does it taste good? That's important. But also I want you to be thinking about what does it bring with it to improve my health? Because food really is medicine, okay, in a way. All right, so we've got the overview going. Let's talk about kind of oils and what they're also known. They're known as fats. They're also known as lipids, all right? So in a very kind of simplified version of it, you have saturated and trans fats, and we really want to avoid those, okay? So this is where it's going to be your job to get in and start reading your labels, all right? Most foods, if they're packaged, they're going to have a label on the back, all right? And I've done a whole thing about this. If you haven't seen that, go back and watch it, or I'll give you a quick tutorial here. But if you look at total fat, it breaks it down then, basically, saturated fat, trans fats, monounsaturated, and polyunsaturated, okay? We want to avoid the saturated and trans fats. Most trans fats in processed foods have been outlawed, so it's not a big problem, but they still do show up when they're frying food or when you're eating some meat, there's some trans fats in it. And so just be aware that even if it's not listed in certain things that may not have a label, it might be coming into your diet. So really, kind of be aware of that. But, what do they look like? They're usually solid at room temperature, all right? They're found in meat, dairy, eggs. Oddly enough, coconut. It's because if you think what coconut oil looks like, it's hard, right? It's like a lard almost, and that has saturated fat in it. And it's the tropical oils. So, while coconut seems super healthy, when it's refined down into an oil, it's less so, all right? So if you want to do coconut, eat the real coconut, okay? And not really the refined state of it. And, just know that we know these saturated fats and these trans fats are definitely associated with chronic health conditions. And that's why we want to avoid them. So what are the chronic health conditions? Heart disease, diabetes, type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol, right? Fatty liver disease, all of them, all the kind of the lifestyle issues that we tend to have because we are eating too many oils. And so this is why it's your job to really start seeing where are they sneaking in, and we'll talk about that, like I said. The American Heart Association it says your goal should be, 5 to 6% of your daily calories can come from saturated fat. What's interesting about that is it used to be much higher, and the more we learn, the more we've seen that number come down. So we really want to avoid saturated fats if we at all possibly can, if we want really good health, all right? So that's sort of the avoid category, the saturated fats. Now I want to talk about the unsaturated fats, and and they're known as the polyunsaturated or the monounsaturated fats. And those are the ones that you hear most about. You hear about it from avocado oil, canola oil, all those different things, right? Yes, they're certainly better, especially if you're trying to get away from the saturated fats. But what I want you to realize is that they're not necessarily still healthful, okay, especially in the quantities that we're eating. So I want you to be aware of them. Certainly swap them in place of the others, but can you still reduce that number even more? That would be better for you, all right? So what do those look like? They're usually liquid at room temperature, and they're found in nuts, okay? They're found in fish, and they're found in the vegetable oils, all right? So just know they are a better choice, but we don't also have to be consciously adding olive oil to everything, and we'll talk more about that, all right? So next, we're going to talk about why we want to reduce these, okay? Oils in a refined state have very little nutritional value, okay? And they're high in calories. And so if you break it down, oil has 9 calories per gram, whereas if you look at a carbohydrate or a protein, they only have 4 calories. So right off the top, you're adding double the calories into whatever you're doing when you add oil to it, okay? And you're getting nothing else with it, just calories. Some will argue flavor, and we have to have a conversation about that, because I'm not really certain that I would agree with that, because to me, now that I've done no oil for so long, it just makes food taste slimy, not necessarily delicious. And so that takes time for that to happen. Your taste buds take 10 days to change, okay, how they taste things. But this idea that you have to be adding it, I want you to start kind of stepping aside from that and going, do I really? And just question that. The other thing is, we know oils and saturated fats, they decrease our blood flow in our arteries after eating a high-fat meal. So how many of you, show of hands, have ever eaten a kind of a high-fat meal and felt sort of sluggish afterwards? Anybody here in the audience ever feel that way? Yeah, hands are going up here, everybody, okay? And at home, I hope they are too, because I ask that really confidently because I know it's true. It's happened to me too. And the reason is because, you're kind of slowing down the blood flows, and everything's going to digest that high-fatty meal. Lots going on when you're digesting fat, okay? So just know they've done studies that show they can measure the flow in an artery after a high-fat meal, and it definitely is restricted. So there's something in there called endothelial cells that kind of get damaged, but that's a whole different topic, okay? So think about it. Digestion slows down because you have to have different enzymes to process that fatty meal and break it down. So that's why things are kind of going on like that. Excess fats are also converted into triglycerides and cholesterol in the liver, and that's stored in your body. So not only does it get stored as extra, those extra calories get stored, but have everyone heard of fatty liver or high cholesterol, right? That's sort of what's going on. Those extra oils are contributing to that. So this is why it's really important to pay attention to how they're coming into your meals. It has a really negative effect on your gut microbiome. What's going on in our gut, how that's happening, is such a big topic right now. We are learning so much about our microbiome, how it affects our mood, our hormones, our immune system, among other things. And so, just know that we know that it gets out of balance. The microbiome gets out of balance because some certain less good, or I hate to say bad, but they are kind of bad, microbes thrive on sugar and fat. So then they proliferate. That means there's less room for the good bacteria that we need, okay? So a lot of times you'll see that flipped ratio, and it's, that kind of, it goes along with trying to lose weight, all right? Okay, it really makes it hard to lose weight when your microbiome's out of whack. And we know that a lot of those oils increase inflammation, especially those saturated fats that we talked about, all right? So that's kind of the reasons I want you to understand why this is such an important topic and why I'm asking you to reduce them. So next we're going to talk about, what about those good oils? All right, I know you're thinking it, okay? Especially what comes to mind, I hear a lot olive oil, and I hear a lot about now avocado oil is kind of the designer oil right now. And you know, just know that yes, they're better. They're certainly better, but they're very refined. And so it's really easy to overconsume them. And so it's better to eat the real food that has those oils, like the olives, okay, or like the avocados, because, and nuts and seeds, right? Because then at least you're getting the oil, but you're also getting some fiber, okay, and some nutrients along the way. When it's processed down into an oil, then all that stuff's removed, okay? All of it's removed. So I just want you to kind of keep that in mind, that if you're really craving something kind of rich tasting, use a spread of avocado on your toast instead of butter, right? It's delicious, okay? And, or, you know, maybe sprinkle some olives onto your sandwich instead of that swig of oil you might be putting on it, okay? Because a lot of people, I'll watch this happen, they'll do the olive oil, when it's like, put the olives on it. It's not only delicious, you get more flavor, but you're also getting the fiber with it, okay? You're getting a lot more, you know, on your sandwich instead of, you know, just the oil. And just know that even these unsaturated oils, like I said, the olive oil and the avocado and the canola, whatever it might be, they still have a percentage of saturated fats in them. All right, and so I'll show you a chart next that, you know, will show you exactly what I mean. So yes, they're better. They're certainly better, and you're thinking, oh, I'm away from those saturated fats. But what I want you to realize is that, yeah, but you're still getting some. So this idea that, you know, you need some fats in your diet because you want to process your, you know, fat-soluble vitamins, trust me, you know, you're getting it. If you're eating anything processed for the most part and are using any bit of oil, you're getting those fats in your diet at some point, and probably in an amount that you need, you know, for your health, all right? Again, processed food, no fiber. The same thing with meat, dairy, and eggs, zero fiber, all right? And we want fiber in our diet. We want it for our colon health, we want it for weight loss, we want it to, you know, fuel our microbiome, you know, those microbes. We need fiber, okay? And so when you're using oil, you're actually, you know, eating foods that don't make you hungry as often, so you eat less fiber because you're full longer in those foods. So just keep that in mind as well. And then there's always the argument of, what about my omega-6s and my omega-3s? And I'm always like, did you ever know what those were before marketing started happening? Just wondering. And just know that, yes, they're important. Omega-3s are certainly important, but it's a ratio. So you want to have more omega-3s, and what do those look like? That looks like your, you know, you can buy them in a supplement. And people were really, the rage was fish oil for a while, which I would say, you know, you might want to check where that fish source is coming from, because there's a lot of contaminants in the ocean these days, right? So if you're going to do that, go to an algae-based source. And then the thing is, it's all about the ratio. So if you reduce your intake of oils, all right, and you know, like some of the oils that we're using to cook with that are high in omega-6s, if you reduce that, you don't need as many omega-3s, all right? And so it's all about that ratio and how it is. So if you focus on really bringing that number down, and then you add in some chia seeds, and you add in some flax seeds or other sources of omega-3s, you will notice that that ratio will be more balanced, okay? And it's very healthful. So you don't need to be consciously adding those omega-6s. We get plenty of them. And that's why people started taking omega-3s to kind of balance that out. They took something to balance it out, but really it's more effective just to lower the omega-6. Make sense? Okay. So next we're going to talk about, this is the chart I wanted to show you, and it's a little hard to see, I apologize. But the red is basically saturated fat, the yellow is the monounsaturated fat, and the blue is the polyunsaturated. Now remember, the yellow and blues are better for us. Okay, then I wouldn't go as far as saying they're necessarily healthy. There's some research that shows they do help with inflammation, but it's mainly because they compare it to the stuff that causes inflammation in a high level. And what happens if we take it completely out? It's really good. You don't have any inflammation at all. But just know, so every oil shown here, canola, olive, corn, safflower, they have a percentage of red in them. Do you see that? So I think it's olive oil is like 14% of it is still coming from saturated fat. So just know that. Yes, it's higher in the unsaturated fats, but it's still having a portion of those in it, all right? So I show you with this because I don't want you to think that, oh, I eat zero saturated fat, because and you might. But if you're using any sort of olive oil, you're still getting a portion of that in that. And remember what the saturated fat does, it contributes to a lot of those chronic health conditions, okay, especially heart disease and high cholesterol. All right, so I just wanted to show you that really quick. Next, let's talk about where's it sneaking into our meals. So I have an example on the screen here of a beautiful bowl of spinach. I love spinach, and spinach is great for us, and has a big pat of butter on it. Now you're probably thinking, that looks delicious. But what if we took that butter off? And so to me, I look at that and I go, oh, they just ruined the dish. What if you just took a swig, a squeeze of fresh lemon on top of it? It pops the flavor, as well as helps you really get the vitamins out of it, because that vitamin C helps you get the iron out of the spinach, and your body uses it readily. So not only does it taste good, it's more beneficial. So just realize that there's so many times that we add stuff to meals that start out really well that actually make it higher calorie, and also it's making it less healthy for us, okay? And this is where you need to decide how much can you go without sacrificing the enjoyment of the meal, okay? Because eating should be enjoyable, it really should be. So where's it sneaking in, okay? Fried food, all right, is one of them. That looks like tempura, that looks like French fries, it looks like donuts. People often ask me, well, what about air fryers? Much better choice. But are you spraying something on there to make it not stick? Okay, and we do, and that's okay, because it's still less, all right? And if that enables you to enjoy it, that might be good for you, okay? It might be what you need to do. Processed foods. Not only are they high in oils, it's fat, sugar, and salt. They're high in all of those. So read your labels. Read your labels for sure. Chips, cookies, cakes, crackers. These are also the same foods that you have to be really careful that you're not getting any trans fats. Most of them should not have them in it, but sometimes they still sneak in. Salad dressings. That's where a lot of oils sneak in, and that's what we're going to make today. I want you to see that you can actually thicken up a salad dressing and not use any oil at all, and it still can be really enjoyable, okay? And mayonnaise, pretty much all oil, right? Even the vegan mayonnaise, okay? Those are people go, I eat vegan, great. But what are you substituting in for? Are you using a lot of the pseudo meats, the faux meats, and a lot of the pretend cheese, or whatever it is? Read your labels. A lot of times they have oils in them, okay? And just, I don't have a problem with it if that's what you choose to do, but just understand what you're doing. I want you to be making the best choices possible. Baking, how many of us use oil in our baking, right? Believe me, you can actually use other things. Applesauce is one of them. I use it all the time when I bake. And then sauteing. Every recipe, almost every recipe, you open it up and it says saute your onion and garlic in 2 tablespoons of oil. And we obediently do that, okay? And so I encourage you I challenge you almost to try it in vegetable broth. Try it with just plain water. And what you'll find is that you might have to keep adding a little bit of the water into it, or the vegetable broth into it, and cooking it a little bit longer. But I assure you, you can still get that browned edge of your garlic or of the onion. It's just going to take a little longer and might be, than what your norm is. But what you've just done when you do that is you've not added calories to that dish or any sort of harmful, oil to that dish by doing that. But yet we do it so automatically. And so this is where I want you to kind of start questioning your habits a little bit and going, wow, can I can I cut down on my fried food a little bit? Maybe I'm going to steam things, okay? Yeah, cool question.
Would that work with fried eggs also?
Yeah, do you have a good pan?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I actually haven't honestly, I haven't fried an egg for a really long time. So I would think it would work. It might not flip as easily for you.
Okay.
Yeah, so the question I got was, would it work for fried eggs? And I have to be really transparent. I haven't fried an egg since, it's been a really long time. And so I don't know how it would work, if it would work with, I would try it though. Yeah, because the worst thing that can happen is you scramble it. You end up scrambling the egg, right? And it's still edible, okay? So that was a really good question. But it works for, so many things. If you're sauteing or stir frying your bell peppers, your red bell peppers, your onion, your garlic, the whole thing. It just once you get used to it, you'll just wonder how I ever used oil in the first place, okay? And then again, if the stir fry saute, if that's really something you like, or that fried food you like that crispy, you might look at adding a air fryer into your kitchen appliances, because that might be a good option. Okay, so next. Here's some more tips for reducing, okay? So when you roast your vegetables, you can do it at a lower temperature for a longer time, all right? And people always tell me, oh, I need to toss them in olive oil first and then roast them in the oven. And I never do. I don't even do my potatoes that way. I mean, a lot of times when I work with clients, they're like, I can't eat potatoes, I have diabetes, and they're starchy. It's like, potatoes are fine. It's the oil you're putting on them, okay? Or the butter you're putting on them. And if you chop them up, and I'll maybe use a little vegetable broth in it and toss it and add my seasonings and then put them in the oven, and I just roast them for longer, and they come out completely browned the way I like them and crispy, okay? So it really does work. You can mist the vegetables with a low sodium vegetable broth, like I just said, or apple cider vinegar, and then add your favorite seasonings. Mine are typically garlic and onion powder, maybe a little parsley on top, so for my potatoes. You can steam your vegetables, and before you season them, okay? You can use those silicone mats on your baking trays instead of spraying it or rubbing, like when I grew up learning to cook through 4-H, we'd take lard and we would rub it on our pans to cook stuff. You don't need to do that. You can saute, like I said, with small amounts of water. Vegetable broth, vinegar is another option. Heat your pans to a higher temperature before you throw your food in, because it immediately starts kind of sizzling it. Invest in the air fryer, we talked about that. And then replace oil in baked goods with applesauce, nut butters, pumpkin, puree, aquafaba. Anybody know what aquafaba is? Anybody out there know what aquafaba is? I don't see any hands going up. Okay, let me tell you. Aquafaba is garbanzo beans, chickpeas. They come in a can, right? And they have a juice in them. You can actually save the juice, eat the beans, save the juice, and then you can use that aquafaba in recipes, okay? And so you really are zero waste. How cool is that? And it actually it's kind of a nice binding agent for oil, not only oil does, but also eggs. So you'll start seeing this aquafaba kind of start cropping up in other recipes, because people are going for zero waste and they're looking for oil alternatives. So, you don't see it as often. Sometimes you'll see it used, they'll actually blend it with a whip, like meringue. I've seen it used that way too. So aquafaba is kind of coming on the scene. Yeah, question?
So in a lot of Chinese cooking, you put in a tablespoon or 2 tablespoons of oil. I use canola oil, 1 tablespoon, and then you put in garlic, and then you put in the veggies. So how would that work with, what would you suggest?
Oh, okay, so the question is,
3-5 minutes.
yeah, the question is how to with Chinese cooking, how they put in your oil and you put in your garlic and your vegetables, right? Is that what you told me? Yeah. I would just use vegetable broth. Yeah. From the very beginning. Yeah, it's kind of blowing your mind, isn't it? Yeah. I see people are skeptical here. They're like, oh, I'm not sure it's going to do the same thing. And if you're not using much oil, it's your choice. You might say, well, it's not that much oil, it's fine. It's it's like, especially for a whole pan, you're like, okay, yeah.
So the canola oil
Mm-hmm.
When you cook it in like 1 pound of vegetable, does any of that saturated fat or that calorie disappear, or is it stuck in that food when you're cooking?
I think it's there, but it's also, the canola is one of the lower ones, right? So actually canola oil is a better choice for saturated fat. So the question was, what about using canola and using it for a whole, pan of food? It's a much lower ratio for sure, okay? So definitely a healthier way of doing it than maybe deep frying something. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. So I want you to start looking at this going, all right, this is, I can tolerate that, and my health can tolerate that. It all depends on where you want your health to be, and if you have health conditions, and where that line is. Make sense?
So none of it disappears during cooking?
I don't think so. I've never actually studied it, but but you're using a small amount, so I think you're doing a very healthful thing. Does that make sense? Yeah, it's a small amount. It's all because the ratio is small. It's a small amount of oil for a whole bunch. The fact that you're eating vegetables, love it. Okay, the more vegetables you eat, the better, all right? Okay, so just know that and plant-based yogurt, what does that look like? That looks like an almond, yogurt or something like that you can use but check the sugar content. I would go for the plain versions of those, okay? All right, so next we have small changes add up. So, what I want you to, I've given you a lot of information here. So what I want you to walk away with is, first of all, start reading your labels, learning where the oil's coming into your meals and some of your favorite foods, and then start saying, are they saturated? Are they monounsaturated, polyunsaturated? What's the percentage over my overall calories, right? Just having that education and start paying attention, that mindfulness about your choices instead of just eating it on default. Okay, that's really important. And so, how I want you to do it is reduce your saturated first where you can, all right? And then work on the unsaturated. Don't try to do too much at once because people are like, forget it, it's too much. Just choose one thing, and then do that consistently. That makes a difference, okay? It really does. Again, saute in vegetable broth or water. Give it a try. Like I said, I'm not sure about the eggs, but I know that the garlic and the onion and the vegetables work because I do it all the time, all right? It certainly does work. Where you can, avoid fried foods, all right? Really try to avoid those fried foods. They're not really great for us, okay? And certainly be avoiding any sort of processed meats, okay? The sausages and the bacon, and yes, they're fried, but they're also highly processed, and they have come out as being a class 1 carcinogen, okay? And that's not good. So if you have to start somewhere, start there, okay? And then really limit your processed foods. Lean into the whole foods, okay? And just remember, anytime you open a package, there's likely more fat, more sugar, and more salt in it. Okay, that's just kind of how it gets processed, and it tastes good. And there's a reason it tastes good because they add all that stuff into it, and then it gets kind of gets us. That saying, you can't eat just one, is designed that way, to not being able to eat just one chip, okay? It's designed that way. All right, so that's the information. Whew, that was a lot, wasn't it? So next, what are we going to do? I'm going to show you a recipe, right? We have that up? Okay. This is called the Magical Applesauce Vinaigrette. And it's magical because we're not using any oil. And some of the things you can also do to thicken your, I chose a sauce or a salad dressing because that is a really big offender for most of us with our oil consumption. And I want you to realize that you can thicken things up, and it can taste good, and it's pretty easy to do. And I also wanted to choose something that probably has ingredients that many of you have at home or pretty easy to get, all right? So what we're going to do is I'm going to just put it in a small container. Again, you don't need to make a huge amount, especially if you don't know if you like it or not. So start with something small, okay? And then I choose an unsweetened applesauce, okay? And I like buying these little individual ones just because they're almost measured exactly. They're 4 ounces, okay? And I don't have to open a whole big jar of applesauce. And so I'm going to start with that. I'm going to pour that in. Let's see if I have my thingy here. thing about this, you make it once and you have it for multiple salads, okay? And then I'm going to use miso. Now, miso is a fermented food. And what I love about miso is it gives kind of a nice flavor, and it gives it a little bit of a salty flavor without really affecting our sodium content. It's really kind of an anomaly how that works. And so I'm going to do a teaspoon. So what I have found with this recipe that I like is this is actually a 4-ounce container, and it calls for a 1/4 cup. So I'm actually using double the amount of applesauce, but I'm keeping all the other ingredients the same. So you know, when you decide how you like it for yourself, if you want it to have more flavor or different consistency, you can certainly do that. So I'm going to add the miso in, all teaspoon. And when I use miso, I typically don't use salt as well. And this actually calls for salt, but I leave it out in mine. You can do whatever you like. If you enjoy it, go ahead and put it in. And then it calls for a 1/4 teaspoon of cumin. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of that in there. Now, if you're not a big cumin person, you could choose another spice that you like. What I liked about this is, the applesauce gives it a little bit of a sweet flavor, and then the cumin gives it a little bit of a pop flavor. If that's such a thing. I don't know if that's a true word of a flavor, but it definitely kind of is a nice balance. And then we're going to do a little 1/8 teaspoon. I don't really have an 1/8 teaspoon, so I'm just going to do a little shake of cinnamon. Okay. And then 2 tablespoons of the apple cider vinegar. You don't have to be anything fancy, just whatever you've got. Doesn't have to be the one with the special mother inside, they call it. There's like a little thing floating at the bottom. Doesn't matter. So we're going to do 2 tablespoons of this. Apple cider vinegar is one of these things that for some it really helps them, if they add it to their salads. I like to do 2 tablespoons on my salad before I add the dressing, and it really helps with blood sugar balance, as well as some say it kind of revs you up a little bit to give you your weight loss a little boost. Not sure how strong the science is on that, but that's what they say. Okay, so we did the apple cider vinegar, cinnamon, cumin. Now we're going to do the balsamic vinegar. Again, you want to read your labels because sometimes it'll have sugar added to it. Okay, so definitely read. We don't really want to have anything with added sugar. We get plenty of sugar. Okay. Add a tablespoon of this, and then Dijon mustard, and which I love just by itself. And I'm using today not the Dijon, but a stone ground Dijon. Okay, and I love just doing this with the vinegar and whisking it up and using that as a dressing. Okay, it's really delicious, super easy to make. So that's good. Let's see, need a teaspoon of this. Come on, you. Under pressure here with everybody watching me. Okay. And then the maple syrup. Now, this is certainly going to add sweetness to it. So if you prefer it less sweet, that's fine. I think a tablespoon's plenty. And there's, it's just not quite as refined. Remember, it's sugar. We're adding in sugar, but it's not quite as refined as like a refined cane sugar. And then you could do the salt. I'm not going to, but it calls for the kind of the sea salt. And then from freshly ground pepper, put some of that in. And I like adding the freshly ground pepper on top of my salad as well. And then I like adding garlic. I just do. I think everything needs a little dab of garlic, okay? So put that in, and then you can mix it up. Now, this is where you have a choice. If you have a blender at home, you can certainly blend it. If you have an immersion blender, it makes it super easy. Do you need that? Not necessarily. All it does is makes it really less chunky. It really blends it up, right? And so, like for me, if I don't want to get this dirty, I would just use a whisk like this and just kind of whisk it. And it's pretty thick, so I would probably add some water. I don't know if you can see this, right? So I would probably add some water to thin it out, okay? Can you see that? There we go. Am I doing it right? In this direction, right? Okay. And so I want to show you in this container, am I have overhead, Sean? Yeah. In this one, it definitely is, I blended it with the immersion blender. So you can see it's a little thinner, little finer, okay? So what we're going to do is, ACC took really good care of me. They brought some plates and I brought a salad. So everybody in the audience can have a little taste of this. But before we do that, I want to talk to you about your salad. Now, salad can get kind of boring. So when you find a really good dressing, you know, it really livens it up. But it gets boring because we get boring. So I want you to think, what are you doing on your salad? Your salad really can be a full-on meal. So are you adding some quinoa, you know, for your grain? Are you adding some beans, you know, black beans or garbanzo beans or kidney beans, whatever beans you like, right? And then you can add in rainbow of colors, right? All types of different vegetables, your green leafies. I didn't have any purple cabbage. I almost always have purple cabbage because I want a really colorful salad. We eat with our eyes too, all right? So you mix it up, you do it all in advance, and you do a big bowl of it so it's in your fridge. You do your salad dressing up, okay, so it's ready to go, and then you don't have to pull all that stuff out multiple times during the week. You just serve yourself the salad, all right? And you put all your goodies on top. Like I always have quinoa cooked. I always have my salad cut up. I have, you know, raisins I love throwing on it. I have some tofu that I bake in advance that I put on it. I eat probably double this as my salad for my meal, okay? Because it's a full-on meal, and you're getting everything you need, all right? You're getting everything you need from beans. You get your protein from your green leafies. You're getting all the fiber. You're also getting your quinoa as a grain, all right? So you're getting everything you need, and it's super delicious, and you top it with a really great dressing. It's super enjoyable. So there's really no excuse not to eat your vegetables, all right? So thank you for joining me. I want to thank ACC for having me. I love that they do this programming for all of you. They do such a great job of that. And I will look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for joining me.